As Ashley said, today we will be talking about asset and space management, particularly in the SLED, or state and local governments, and educational agencies. So I'm going to start off with a kind of a PowerPoint to kind of set the stage and a little bit of background before I hand it off to Andrew Sturts for the presentation of the software. And as questions arise, as Ashley said, please just type them into the question panel so that we can address them at the end. So this is our agenda. I'm just going to give a brief overview of our company and what we do, talk a little bit about space, asset and space management in SLED, how to manage spaces, assets, and work order systems, and then we'll switch over to show the Archibus platform in action. Then at the end, we will talk about procurement opportunities through the GSA schedules for governmental and educational agencies. So a little bit about IMAGINiT Technologies. Our biggest division of IMAGINiT is the Autodesk side. We are North America's largest Autodesk partner. We are a platinum partner for Autodesk products and services. We are also an Archibus platinum partner. We have been doing Archibus for 30+ years from the FM team, and plus 40+ years in totality for including Autodesk reselling and support. As some of the bullet points, we have over 35,000 satisfied customers. We do have the largest team of technical experts in the industry. We've created a lot of IP and enhancements and tools for both Archibus and Autodesk platforms. We do have dedicated technical support team for both divisions. We also have a customer advocacy team for the Autodesk side. We are dedicated to data management, and when it comes down to it, it is all about the data. Facilities management is also all about the data of facilities data. We do have a simulation division that can do simulation scenarios, and software development teams. Let's talk about asset management and asset management types. Depending on what your organization is, whether it's state, local government, or educational government, assets may have a different definition. I mean, even in financial institutions, assets mean a completely different thing than what we as facilities managers think about assets. So there's asset management, which you can read here, which is optimize the use of all assets and throughout the full life cycle and try to maintain or extend the life cycle of a particular asset, is the basic definition of asset management. And there's different tools that you can use to do that. Obviously, the main being maintenance of those assets. And there's also EAM, enterprise asset management. And this not only takes asset management to another level, where we can integrate with other goals of your organization, whether it's tied to strategic real estate planning, capital planning, portfolio projects, finance. If you want to tie into whatever finance system and really take a deep dive into how your assets are used, what are the costs, what are the long-term costs, short-term costs, and particularly also planning for the future as you receive all this data about your assets. Especially, and enterprise asset management is usually tied to big ticket item assets. And a side activity tied to asset management that organizations can do is condition assessment. So condition assessment is taking a visual tour of your assets and making an assessment. What is the condition of the asset? Is it good, poor? Is it in violation of code, maybe? Then you can, as an organization, prioritize these actions, whether it's something that needs to be immediately done, something that can hold on, or something that may need capital budgeting because it's a big ticket item. So that condition assessment activity tied to asset management is important in the strategic goals of your organization, as far as long-term asset management and kind of thinking into the future as far as what needs to be done and prioritizing. What's nice about what I just said and is that the product Arquebus that we will be showing has all these activities that are in one integrated system that you can use so that you can make those decisions as an organization. So in summary, asset management, we want to manage the complete asset lifecycle from intake to use to disposal of the asset, and track that in an efficient way to maximize the asset lifecycle. Also tied to those assets, an organization may want to manage the inventory of those assets, not only the assets themselves inventory, but parts for those assets, which the system can do. We want to monitor performance, whether it's by visual performance or if it's tied into some sort of automated monitoring system that can be tied into the Arquebus system, so that you can see when the performance is not up to standard, and take a look at it and make some assessments as far as what needs to be done. And finally, perform maintenance. As we know, both break fix and preventive maintenance are part of asset management, where preventive maintenance is more efficient, less costly than reactive maintenance. So with a system like Arquebus, all these tasks can be done within one system. Now, I talked about maintenance of the system. There are two types: preventive maintenance, two types mainly, but also predictive maintenance, which is tied into the performance and conditioning using a monitoring of the assets. That's becoming more prevalent with the IoT coming into more maturity right now. So a lot of equipment and assets are tied into IoT, so that organizations can monitor the systems as it's almost in real time. And corrective maintenance. As I said earlier, preventive maintenance, the more preventive maintenance the organization has, the better. Studies have shown that preventive maintenance is more cost effective, cheaper than corrective maintenance, where you're reacting to something that breaks. Obviously, if something breaks, there's costs in the downtime of that piece of equipment, and also the maintenance of pulling people and trying to fix that in a timely manner. So if you can, as an organization, to this day, I find that many organizations that I speak to that is interested in a maintenance management system, it's quite surprising how many organizations still kind of use pen and paper, even maybe if they're a little more sophisticated, that an Excel spreadsheet. With a system, a computerized maintenance management system or corrective system, that both preventive maintenance, corrective, and or predictive, that can be a lot more efficient, streamlined, cost effective, get your ROI back in a maintenance management system of those assets. Again, this is important, as you all know in the facilities groups, that the better we keep those assets up and running more efficiently, the less costly it is, the longer your asset stays on board with the organization. Long-term costs are also better for the organization. The summary for maintenance management systems, as I said, manage the complete asset lifecycle. Again, this helps with the management of the complete lifecycle from inception to the use of the asset, and then to the disposal of the asset. We want to extend that as far as possible. The keys to maintenance management are preventive maintenance, which as an organization, that's where the bulk of your work should be, is on the preventive maintenance side. Do those preventive maintenance tasks and keep those assets up and running as much as possible without breakdowns. Corrective maintenance, when they do break down for whatever reason, we want to minimize the downtime through the preventive maintenance and maximize the life cycle through regular preventive maintenance. Corrective maintenance, again, being an option that is the least desirable. Now let's talk about space management. Space management has become lately a pretty important aspect in all types of organizations. And we've actually been speaking with state and local governments as organizations start to deal with back to work initiatives. I know some departments have never been able to work at home, obviously for very good reasons, but state and local organizations and also higher ed, education, across the whole spectrum, there is a desire to get at least back to work on a part-time basis, a hybrid basis. So to do that, I think organizations have to have an idea of what their space is. What do our desks look like? Where are our cubicles? Where can people sit? With this knowledge of how many desk spaces, what square footage, organizations can make a plan on, all right, how many days do we want people to come back in? Do we have too much space? Can we get rid of some space? Because can we let a lease elapse and not renew because we're going to be in a hybrid situation for a while? So we don't need that space, or maybe not for a while. Maybe this is going to be the new normal. So these are generally the big topics that we've been hearing about and talking to people about in probably the last 6 months or so. So to do that, you really need to have a handle of what you have, and many organizations do not really have a handle of what they have. They kind of have an idea, but not really. So part of space management is departmental space usage and personnel. Is like, what department, how many square footage do you have? How many desks or kiosks or office workspaces do you have? Versus how many personnel are using it? Do you have more space than personnel in your department, or do you have not enough space versus the number of people you have in your department? This type of information helps organizations make informed decisions about how to manage that space, dispose of it, reassign it to other groups, etc. If an organization has either CAD drawings or a Revit model or BIM, floor plans basically of your space, this is really helpful with the Archibus system, because graphically you'll be able to see everything, make decisions as far as configuration of the floor plan. Does it make sense? Is it efficient? Do you want groups? Do you want teams, etc.? All those decisions graphically. And if you have people that are going to be in a hybrid situation where they're coming into work a couple days a week, you might give them the opportunity to reserve that space, a web on their iPhone or tablet, or from their home as they log in from the home. So those days that they're coming in, they can see what spaces are available. If there's if part of the team that they want to work together or be near, as far as because they have projects together, they can reserve those spaces so that they can be together and collaborate more. And part of having this space, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is once you know what you have, you can start thinking strategically. Do we have too much space? Can we release some of this space, as in not renewing leases, or if you own certain buildings, can we dispose of them? Can we sell them, et cetera, or lease them to another organization? So these are some of the strategic thoughts and planning that organizations can do to save money, basically. And there's indirect cost recovery. This is real dollars, especially in this is mainly towards the educational organizations. If you do any government, get any government grant or government monies for spaces used for research, especially in the higher ed, if that space is used in relations to that research that is getting grant monies from the government, organizations can realize real dollars by tying the cost of that space to that, and basically charging the government for that use of that space for that research or whatever project that it's tied to. And when I say real dollars, we work with a couple of pretty big universities that do a lot of research, and we're talking close to $1 billion a year that they're getting from the government as basically rent and indirect cost recovery for the usage of that space. And again, as I was alluding to earlier, which is, frankly, I started out with it, is the return to work initiative. There's a lot of interest and a lot of impetus for that. So organizations we've been talking to are looking for tools to help them and their employees to use to reserve space as they return to a hybrid model, at least for now, and we'll see what happens in the future. So Arquebus Space Management, how does this tie in? So we can align workplaces to real needs. So you have to know what you have and what you need to make that decision, make that alignment so that it's efficient. Eliminate wasted space. As I said earlier, we have too much space because people are coming in hybrid. What do we do with that extra space? Can we dispose of it, not renew a lease, or potentially sublease it to another organization that might need it? Or increase real estate capacity. Real estate, facilities and real estate is the second highest cost for an organization after payroll and benefits. So it's a big number for organizations, and try to get that lean and mean and efficient is a great way to save money for organizations, whether it's state, local, as a government entity, or higher ed. Even in higher ed, where they have offices, obviously classrooms and research areas are a different story, but they have administrative buildings that they can make efficient use of. Maximize indirect cost recovery. Again, for higher ed, research organizations, very important. And finally, elevate the employee experience. Give them the tools that makes it easy for them when they come into a back to work situation to find spaces that is good for them to sit at, to collaborate with team members on projects, etc. So that's important, and we're seeing a lot of requests for that these days. That's the end of the presentation. So I'm going to pass this over to Andrew Sturts from Eptura to feature the Arquebus software.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Sturts. I'm a solutions engineer here at Eptura, and I'll be walking you through some of the Arquebus platform and software to show you what it looks like and show you all these great things that Robert was just speaking about. So on my screen right now, what you're seeing is the Arquebus platform. And when a user logs in, as I have here, they are presented with what we call a homepage. And a homepage is generally made up of a number of statistics, key performance indicators, and metrics based around what's going on in your portfolio in regards to Arquebus. What you're seeing on the screen now is one that's kind of based around asset management. So you're seeing a number of metrics and KPIs around that topic. And these homepages are fully configurable. Arquebus ships out of the box with close to 300 of these metrics and KPIs out of the box. And we can configure these homepages for your different groups of users based on generally their job function. So we have, there are different metrics around asset management, as you're seeing on the screen now, space management, real estate, capital projects, capital budgeting, so on and so forth. And there's a number of different ways that we can display these metrics. So you're seeing different examples of those here. So along the top of the screen here, you're seeing all of the buildings that are in a portfolio and metrics around maintenance costs, monthly maintenance costs, and replacement values. You're also seeing other ones like operational costs and the trending of those costs over time. So you can see here that our O&M costs for our assets are kind of going down while things like asset turnover is rising. So you can see all sorts of different metrics in a number of different ways. We have a number of alerts as well down here, where you can set, what those thresholds are, what constitutes a red alert versus a yellow alert versus a green alert. And when one of these metrics hits a critical threshold, we can send out notifications, an email notification to a responsible party that says, well, you have this number of assets or this number of open work orders going on this week. It's hit this critical threshold. Maybe we want to perform some action based on those metric values. We can display things on maps using a GIS integration that we have out of the box with ArcGIS and Esri. This one happens to be showing asset utilization by building. So you're seeing each dot on the map here is a building in the portfolio, and we're seeing the metric value for the asset utilization in that building. Again, this is all completely configurable. We can swap in and out different metrics and different KPIs. We can display them in a number of different ways, and we can assign these home pages to your different groups of users so that your space planners might see one home page that has metrics based around space planning, areas per square foot, areas per occupant. You can have another homepage that's dedicated to your facility managers or your maintenance managers that's showing you metrics about, field technician performance, number of open work orders, so on and so forth. The next thing I want to show you is space management within Archibus. Space management within Archibus is generally the foundation of Archibus. Most of our clients typically start with space management and then build on top of that. The reason for that is, space is really the bedrock of a portfolio. You can't really have an asset and put it into and know where that asset is unless you have the space for that, and you know where that space is, who owns that space, how big that space is, so on and so forth. So if we go into space and we talk about space management within Archibus, we have what's called the Space Console. The Space Console is really your one-stop shop for all of your space allocation and occupancy needs. This is where you'll be looking at, which organizations or which divisions, departments within your organizations own which spaces. What type of spaces do we have? Who's sitting in those spaces? Who's assigned to those spaces? When we get into the Space Console, you'll notice that up at the top here we have a search box. In that search box, we can search for sites, buildings, floors, specific rooms. If I wanted to find all of the floors that a particular division or department owns, or space that a particular division or department owns, we can search for that division or department. We can search for different types of rooms as well. And this search box here is going to restrict this list of floors in this upper left-hand panel to show me all of the floors that meet my search criteria. If I search for a particular building here, we have our technology center. It's our NCO5 building. It's going to restrict this panel, show me all of the floors that I have in that building and some key information about each of those floors, things like occupancy and capacity and gross areas, so on and so forth. I can check off one of the floors that I want to work with, and that's going to bring up the floor plan. Now, looking at this floor plan, I can zoom in and out. I can look at all the geometry of the floor plan. I'm also seeing some information on the floor plan in the individual rooms. I'm seeing things like the furniture layout. If I've put equipment blocks or asset blocks into those drawings, I would be able to see those assets as well. I'm also seeing the room numbers and the name of the person that's been assigned to that room or is sitting in that particular space. Working with these drawings, I'm also able to highlight these drawings by a number of different criteria. So here are all the different criteria that I can highlight this floor plan by. So for example, if I wanted to find which divisions in my organizations own space on this floor, and which spaces do those particular divisions own? Well, I can highlight the spaces by division. That's going to highlight the floor plan. Each of the spaces by their allocation. I can pull up a legend here and I can see that all of these pink spaces here are owned by the Admin Services Division, while all of these orange spaces are owned by the Business Development Division. I can look at things like what kinds of rooms are these if I highlight by room category. Pulling up my legend, you can see that all of these orange spaces now are meeting spaces, while these light green spaces are offices. We have some open workstation areas as well. I'm also able to highlight by more than one criteria at a time. So just going back, if I highlight again by division, so now I know, which spaces are owned by which division, but I also want to know what type of spaces these are. we can turn on a border highlight, and I can border highlight, again, by all of that same criteria by room category. And you'll see that I'll put a different colored border around each of the spaces. And now I can see that, this space here is owned by the business development division, and the space type is, or the type of room it is a workstation. So I can really just glean a lot of information off of these floor plans by just highlighting by a couple criteria, looking at the labels as well. So I can tell that this is the space here is owned by the facilities department. It's a open workstation, and Randy sits in that desk. All of this is also exportable. I can export to PDF or Word, so that I'm able to print off this floor plan, save it to my computer, email it around to anyone who needs it if they don't have access to Archibus or anything like that. So that's just kind of looking at the floor plans. I'm also able to do some allocation work as well. So I've just turned off that border highlight to make it a little less busy. I'm still highlighting this floor plan by division. And if I wanted to change this allocation, so we can see that these three spaces that are currently owned by the business development team, they're currently unoccupied. They're not really using them. So maybe we have another division within the organization that requires more space. And since the business development team doesn't seem to be using these workstations, maybe we need to reallocate them to a different division within the organization. Well, along the left-hand side in the bottom left-hand panel is a panel of organizations within our company. So we have all of our divisions here, and maybe the corporate management division needs to take over these three spaces. I can very easily and very quickly change the allocation on these spaces by clicking our assign button here. It's this kind of picture of a box with an arrow coming out of it. If I click that, you'll say click on the rooms to then assign them to the division corporate management, and I can click, 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 and then commit those changes, and those rooms are now allocated to that corporate management division. I'm also able to do occupancy work within the Space Console as well. Switching over to our occupancy mode in the Space Console, I have some people. I have Anne and Jonah here sitting in these desks, possibly. And notice that the office across the way from her has been open for a number of weeks, and she's decided that she no longer wants to sit next to Jonah, so she's going to pick up her things and move. We want to make sure that in Archibus that we have our occupancy data up to date and it's accurate. And we've noticed that Anne has moved her desk. We can go ahead and update where people are sitting in the Space Console by simply just picking up Anne's name from the floor plan, dragging and dropping her into a new space, and committing those changes. And now Anne's space has been updated. We can see that Anne now sits in that space. I can move a number of people at once if I want, so I can just continue moving people around. If I move Randy over here and Jonah over here, I can make all of those changes. They are pending assignments until I commit them, so I can move, an entire division's worth of people around to different floors or different buildings or within the same floor, lay them out and see where they're going. I can see that I've moved these three people from these three locations to these three locations. I can commit those assignments, and then those three people have moved. It's kind of a brief overview of space management within Archibus. There are a number of other things that we can do. There's all sorts of reporting within the space management application in Archibus. So we can do things like chargeback. We can look at allocation and benchmarks, remaining area, departmental stack plans. There's all sorts of different reporting and notifications and things like that that we can do within space management. Moving on to operations or maintenance, as Robert was talking about, I'm going to switch over to our mobile app, which is our employee experience app called Workplace. On the screen now, I have my iPad. The employee experience application is called Workplace. It's right there in the top row of icons there. It's the third one from the left. The application is available for all Apple and Android devices. It's available in both those app stores and connects to your instance of Archibus and is your employee experience, your general employee experience application. So it's for your employees to do a number of different tasks. It's all completely configurable. Again, what you see on these menus, we can take out, we can add other things into them. These are just a few examples of what you can do. So you can do things like look up people and places. You can book desks or book meeting spaces and request other types of services. So just to give you an example, if I'm looking for Randy and I want to just know I have a meeting with Randy, I want to go see where he is. I want to go visit him at his desk. I can go into the Workplace application. Oh, I'm sorry, it logged me out. 1 second, I'll just log back in. I can go into the People and Places section of the application and look up Randy's name, and it'll show me on a floor plan where Randy's sitting. Let's try that again. There we go. So if I look, it brings up a floor plan. I can look at different floor plans. I can book these desks. I can just search for Randy if I want to. So if I look for Randy, I see that Randy Collins. I can locate Randy. It'll show me exactly where Randy's sitting. So Randy's right there in desk 4610. I get some information about Randy, his phone number, his email address, his organizational information. I can call, I can email, I can text him right from the app as well. Now going into maintenance, if I'm a general employee and I'm having an issue at my desk, for instance, maybe the outlet is broken under my desk, I need to report that as a maintenance issue. So going into services, I can request different services. Again, this is all completely configurable about what we offer as services to our employees. These are, again, just a few examples of them that we can do. So we can do things like move requests. If someone wants to request to move, they might have a hot cold issue. They want to raise or lower the temperature in a particular meeting room, or maybe just general maintenance. If we go into general maintenance, they're having an electricity issue and the outlet is broken. I can say, the outlet under my desk is sparking. It automatically knows based on the user that I'm logged in as where my location is. I'm able to change that. I can select it from a floor plan if I want. If I'm in a particular meeting room or I find an issue in a hallway or a restroom or something like that, I can choose those spaces. But I'm just going to do this at my desk. If the problem is with a specific piece of equipment, I'm able to add that particular piece of equipment. So for example, maybe the copy machine is out of toner or the printer is jammed or something like that. I can add that piece of equipment into my request. Clicking next, I'm able to upload photos and documents using the device's camera. So if I wanted to take a picture of the issue, I'm able to do that and attach that to the work order as well, and then click send to submit that request. Now, behind the scenes in Archibus, there are configurable workflows for how the system is going to handle those requests. So you might have a dedicated electrician at a particular location, and this request is going to route directly to that electrician, and that electrician would then be responsible for going out and fixing that issue. We can have other workflows where they require things like approvals by supervisors or maintenance managers based on different criteria. There could be things like estimation steps where if it's a larger issue, we may want to estimate how many hours it might take for a technician to fix this issue. We might want to estimate costs. We might want to estimate things like what parts are we going to use and what are the costs of those parts. But let's imagine that that issue went directly to the field technician to go and fix that issue. Well, there's another application, mobile application, that we offer for those technicians out in the field. It's called OnSite. It's in that second row of icons there. It's the last icon. This app is designed for those technicians out in the field to update those work orders that are assigned to them, whether they be preventive maintenance work orders that have been assigned to them, or corrective or reactive maintenance issues that have been assigned to them, and for them to, enter the number of hours that they worked on those issues, any parts that they might have used, locate where the work needs to take place, and update the status of those requests. So now I'm kind of acting as that field technician out in the field, going out to work on my jobs for the day. I can launch the application, and it's going to group my work orders by priority. So you can see I have 2 requests that have that emergency priority, 2 requests that are urgent. I've got a number of preventive maintenance issues. I've got some routine requests as well. If I go into the routine, it's going to give me that queue of requests. So these are all the routine requests that have been assigned to me. I can filter them. Using the buttons in the top right, I can filter those requests, the list of requests down. I can search for a particular request that maybe might be submitted by a particular person or is taking place in a particular location. But if I just tap on the top one, it's going to bring me into that particular request. You can see the status in the blue bar at the top is issued and in process. That means that I'm out there working on that request. It's going to give me the description of the request, the location of where that work needs to take place. I can tap on that location. It's going to show me exactly where on that floor plan where that problem is, and so that I can wayfind myself to that location. If there's a piece of equipment that needs to be worked on, I can use that first button there to scan a barcode, or I can use that second button there to enter that piece of equipment or go into the details and look at the details of that piece of equipment. I can see who submitted this request. So I can see that Adam Miller, the Director of Facilities, was the one that submitted this request, possibly through that workplace application that I just showed you. I'm able to call, text, or email him directly from the application. And then below that, I can log my work hours. So as I'm working on this request, a requirement may be that I log the number of hours that I spent working on this request. You can see that I've spent 6 hours working on this request so far. If I've come back in and I want to look when I worked on those hours, how many hours I worked on each day on this request, adding up to the total 6 hours, I can see that. I can even add more hours by clicking this plus button. So today I'm doing different types of work. We can log the different types of work. So I might just be doing work. Again, depending on the level of granularity that you want to track. Maybe I had to get in the truck and drive across town to get to that work site. So I might want to log that travel time. Maybe I had to sit in traffic for an hour to get there, and that's an hour of my time. I want to make sure that that hour is accounted for. I can log that as travel time. Might have had to go to Home Depot to buy a new outlet and needed to go and pick up those materials. Also, maybe didn't have access right away to the job site, and I had to wait for security or wait for the client to show up to let me into the building or let me into the space. I want to make sure that I log that time. So if I'm just gonna log my work here. So maybe I worked for another hour on this request, so I can log that as work type. Choose how long I worked on that request. So maybe I worked on it for an hour and a half. If it was overtime, I can choose that overtime button that would apply my overtime rates as the technician and save that work. So now you can see I've logged great work. I've logged an hour and a half, and now I've got 7.5 hours of work logged on this one request. Going back, I can have different checklists. So if it's a preventive maintenance issue, there may be a checklist associated with this request that I need to work through. And I can see any other technicians that are assigned to this request. So you can see I have Will Technician. He's a multi-trade technician, and he was assigned on March 22nd at 9 a.m. I'm also able to view any documents and photos that might have been submitted with the request. I can also add my own documents or photos to this request, and I'm also able to log comments. And I can see all the activity that took place on this request as well. Once I'm finished with the request, I can scroll back up to the top and I can change the status of this request. So if I've completed all the work on this, I can change the status to completed, and that request would then drop off my queue. And I can go back to my queue and work on the next request. So very nice. You don't have to, our technicians don't now have to, go to these job sites with a binder full of printed out work orders. You can still do that. You're still able to print off the requests and things like that in Archibus. But we're finding a lot more people want to use a mobile application. Again, it's available on a tablet or a phone, Apple or Android. Okay, I want to leave enough time for the other Andrew to present. Andrew, I'm going to pass it right back over to you.
Thank you. Hello. How's everybody doing? My name is Andrew Daugherty. I'm at TD SYNNEX. If you're not familiar with TD SYNNEX, you might be more familiar with DLT. That's our old name, as we just recently got acquired by TD SYNNEX. I'm all things Archibus at TD SYNNEX/DLT. So in the future, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help any way I can. Today, I'll be talking to you about GSA Procurement. What is GSA? It's a contract that you are able to purchase off of, and many agencies are available to purchase off of it. Federal agencies, state, local, education, tribal governments, and co-ops. Along with that are contractors. So if you're contracted by the government for a project or a job, you're able to do so. Higher education, you can do so as well. And there's also many benefits to it as well. It's about 5% discount off of MSRP, which is always nice, where you can save money where you can. It's a predetermined price and contract by GSA. It's determined fair and reasonable. That way it's not overpriced. And lastly, it's a streamlined contract vehicle. So if you get a quote on GSA and you take it over to procurement, your procurement's going to typically be pretty happy because they accept GSA. It's much easier for them to process GSA quotes. While if you just received a regular quote for the purchase, you might have to go to a few other vendors or send this out to bid, while GSA is much easier to process. I think that's about all I wanted to cover over GSA. There's quite a bit, but I just wanted to keep it brief for everyone because it can be a little complex, but it's available contract to take advantage of and purchase off of, which most people here, I believe, are able to, and you receive a discount on it as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Again, if you have any questions that pop up related to anything that we presented today, including the software itself, and or the procurement process for GSA, I can handle them and funnel them through the right person or answer them if I happen to know the answer. So I will be the conduit for any of the subject matter questions. Thank you, everyone.